Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be going through some Week 15 waiver wire pickups.
Hike!
Well, Joe, if you made your playoffs, this is the time to get some extra juice on your bench for possibility of some players getting hurt or, who knows? Maybe you feel like you need one of these guys. So first guy we're going to be talking about, a guy who I was a little more interested than you are. And that's going to be wide receiver Jalen McMillan, the rookie out of Washington. Ended up having 7 targets, 4 catches for 59 yards and 2 touchdowns. Has a difficult matchup next week at the Chargers. He's rostered in 12% of leagues. What say you about Jalen McMillan?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. He'd been pretty disappointing and lackluster in this year, but then also all of a sudden had a big breakout game. And, if you happen to listen to the fantasy footballers, Andy Holloway actually called this. He was his touchdown guarantee of the week. And while Mike and Jason were laughing at him, Andy's going to get the final laugh this week as he went ahead for 2 touchdowns, 7 targets. I just don't know. I'm wondering if this is more of a kind of a blimp on the radar than maybe a trend that could continue here. I know McMillan was a guy that a lot of us have been was enthused about and excited for, especially after the Godwin injury, but then just hadn't been utilized. I know he's had his injuries of his own. Just wonder, do you think this is, I mean, obviously you were more excited than me. I'm more so looking at it from, if you want to stream this guy, I think it's going to be tough against the Chargers next week. Do you think this type of performance continues?
I just think, you look back at week 7 and week 8, he received 8 and 7 targets. Then he got injured, missed a few games, came back from the bye, started to try to get more involved in the offense. And then he finally, did what he did. I just think if you look at the talent and that team in general, that receiver room is pretty bare bones. I mean, you got Mike Evans and that's about it. You got Sterling Shepard. He's a little bit older. So someone's got to step up. Maybe teams are keying in more on Cade Otton. There was a blip of Cade Otton, and then he's kind of disappeared. And I think Bucky Irving got injured that game. So I just, Bucks are in the mix. Mayfield, they typically let him throw quite a bit, in game from game. So to me, I think McMillan would be a good option for you as a backup guy. I'd say probably about 0 to 5%. I probably lean more towards the lower end. Nothing crazy. He does play Dallas, though, in Week 16. Carolina's been a little more stingy in Week 17, but I like the Dallas matchup. But I do agree that the Chargers matchup is not great.
Yeah, I do like the Dallas matchup. If you don't necessarily need him as a streamer, I think he could be a nice bench ad for you, like you said, especially 0 to 5% range does make sense. And if you happen to make it on to Week 16, as most playoffs are starting this week here in Week 15, you do have a pretty good matchup, and maybe he's able to supplant one of your starters.
Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. Next guy we're going to be talking about here is running back Patrick Taylor of the San Francisco 49ers. Now, Joe, we got burned by this a week ago, I think it was, because we typically try to post our waiver wire episode out early for those that kind of get a jump on it to hear what we have to say. And we said, go ahead and get Jordan Mason. Well, at that time, we didn't know that he was also going to go in IR. And then Garendo was really the pick. Obviously, we would have talked about Garendo. But as a result, that didn't happen. But we know now that Garendo has a foot sprain. We don't know the severity of it. But this is the San Francisco, well, more so the Kyle Shanahan, running back scheme here with his zone blocking, I believe. That it's just very beneficial for running backs. We saw Garendo perform. We've seen McCaffrey perform. Obviously, he's all world. But we've seen other just random running backs, Jordan Mason, do very, very well. So to me, this is the ad of the week, so long as Garendo is out. We don't, it's going to be a short week coming up. They play on a Thursday, so I believe. So, at the end of the day, I think Taylor's a great pickup. I do also like Izzy Abanikanda, guy that you were able to take, I think, from the practice squad from the Jets. I thought he was an interesting player. They also have Keshawn Vaughn, too. So it's not a guarantee that Taylor is the guy. I think he will be. But just in case, based on what happened the last time, Joe. I'm covering all our bases and talking about all the
Yeah.
guys who could be in there.
Yeah, I think the most important lesson learned is just that you want a piece of the San Francisco 49er backfield, like you mentioned. I mean, it goes back to the days of Mike Shanahan running that zone blocking scheme. Even in Denver, it just didn't matter what running back you put back there. The running backs just seemed to perform. We've seen it time and time again here with the San Francisco 49ers, like you said, whether it's McCaffrey, Mason, Garendo, Patrick Taylor now. You're just going to want a piece of it. These guys are successful. You mentioned the short week against the Rams coming up on Thursday, so it is a quick turnaround for Garendo to fully, rest up whatever injury he's, that foot that he's dealing with. Like you said, I don't know the severity of it, but he could be iffy, especially on the short week. And I think you got to go out and get Patrick Taylor. I mean, he had a touchdown late in this game. You mentioned some of the other guys, which could be interesting with the receiving upside. Patrick Taylor wasn't really involved in the passing game in this game. So maybe those other guys are interesting for PPR leagues.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, these games typically, from what I remember, these games can be shootouts between the Rams and the Niners. So to have a guy like Patrick Taylor, I think would be really big heading into Week 15. You're going to have some stones to play him compared to some of your other starting running backs. But if you don't have a second starting running back that has carried you along the way, then I think Patrick Taylor makes a ton of sense. I would say he's worth 5 to 10% FAAB.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. I know we were willing to go more aggressive for Mason, Garendo, Patrick Taylor. I think 5 to 10 probably makes sense. Where we were willing to push the envelope to the 10 to 20 range with those other guys.
Only 8% rostered, so he should be a guy you'd be able to get. So next player we're going to be talking about here is running back Isaiah Davis of the New York Jets. Had 10 carries for 40 yards and a touchdown. Also had 6 targets, 3 catches for 27 yards. We heard late that Breece Hall's knee was going to cause him to miss the game, which a lot of people were expecting that he could play. He was going to be down. I think he turned to be doubtful later on, but it was kind of one of those things: is he going to play? Is he not going to play? But I think a lot of us, including myself here, thought that Braylon Allen was just going to step right in because of what he's been involved with in the offense for the entire year, but not so fast. Isaiah Davis started getting involved, only rostered in 15% of leagues. Joe, what say you on Isaiah Davis?
Yeah, I think Isaiah Davis is interesting. Obviously, it's going to require Breece Hall being out. I'm not so sure what's going on with I'm hearing it's a potential MCL injury with Breece Hall. Iffy to go was out, but even the week before when he did play, he didn't look like Breece Hall. Wasn't the same player. I know the Jets said they weren't going to shut him down, but is it likely maybe he misses week 15 and maybe he's able to return week 16, 17? But I think Isaiah Davis is a good stash just in case. I mean, back-to-back weeks with a touchdown. He got 10 carries in this game. Also, you mentioned the targets he was able to get, with the receiving touchdown the past week and then got a rushing touchdown. I like him. He's got a decent burst, and I think he's a nice change of pace back to go along with Braylon Allen.
See, I think they could shut him down. I mean, what do the Jets have to play for right now?
I'm just saying that the Jets came out and said they're not going to shut him down.
They're not.
That was the report this morning.
They can say whatever they want to say, though.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, Ian Rappaport said the plan is not to shut him down.
Yeah, but they can say whatever they want, and then the opposite happens. I'll see it. I'll believe when I see it at the end of the day. But you said, Joe, and I think it's a great point. You said that Breece Hall was really the guy in your mind to get at the trade deadline because of his juicy playoff schedule. They got Jets have at Jacksonville, LA Rams, and at Buffalo. So I mean, in the event that Breece Hall is gone, how much would you spend for Isaiah Davis? Because it's tough because it seems like it would be a timeshare between Allen and then Davis.
Yeah. Even so, I mean, I think I might be willing to do 5 to 10% for him, just because he's got the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tony Pollard just had himself a game, and Titans really struggled in the passing game to really get things going. So the fact that he had such a good game gives me pretty good confidence. Isaiah Davis could, continue the run that he's on. And if he continues to get, 10 carries in the run game plus the receiving that he's been getting as well, I think he's worth it.
And Joe, you sound like Tom Brady over there.
Yeah, no, I don't know what's going on. I don't need the lozenges that Brady needed, but
I know, I
just
guess so.
something there in my throat, I guess.
Yeah, right. Next play we're going to talk about here is running back Kendre Miller. Kendre Miller is finally free. He's off the injured reserve, and Dennis Allen is no longer his head coach. And thus, he did all right. He had 10 carries for 32 yards and a touchdown, only rostered in 9% of leagues. What say you, Joe, about Kendre Miller?
Yeah. Now this isn't a guy like Patrick Taylor, Isaiah Davis, but I think he's worth mentioning just as a stash. I think you go, anywhere from 0 to 5% for him. We keep seeing these running back injuries happen. And in the event that Alvin Kamara does happen to go down, Kendre Miller, I mean, he wasn't a name that I was necessarily thinking about or just saw him pop up on, the fact that he got a touchdown in this game, but the fact that he also had 10 carries with Alvin Kamara, healthy and involved. And you mentioned Dennis Allen being gone. I really feel like for whatever reason, he had like a personal vendetta against Kendre Miller. It just never said anything positive about the guy. With Rizzy in there, maybe they turn over a new leaf and get Kendre Miller more involved in this offense.
I honestly feel bad for him, to be real with you, because it's just like, this guy's career could have been done. Think about that, right? I mean, how many players, it's hard enough to get to the NFL. And then he gets to the NFL, he gets drafted, I forget, mid-round pick, goes to the Saints, and it could have been likely that he just didn't play at all for the Saints, and he would have had the hope that a second team would give him a chance. But he hasn't seen the time of day, so who would have given it to him? So I'm glad for him, because he had a lot of potential as a guy you liked a lot in the draft. You kind of made me get excited about him over time. So I think he's interesting. I'd say 0 to 5%. He's more of a stash than a must add, I think. But at the end of the day, the Saints, I don't think are going to be, with Derek Carr getting injured. I don't think the Saints really have a path forward. So maybe a guy like Kamara, who's a veteran, who's already got his money, maybe he starts getting active here these next few weeks, who doesn't play as much, and you start to see more of the young guy in Kendre Miller. That would be my concern as a Kamara owner. I almost would rather him be out and I have Kendre Miller as a stash so I can just go play him. Otherwise, it may be this kind of blend. I mean, Kamara did not do well today. It looked like it was a good matchup, but he didn't do well.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of surprised and honestly, like I mentioned, the surprise with the Kendre Miller workload, but we just see it time and time again. Grab the handcuffs to your guys just in case. I mean, you see what it's taking now. I mean, with McCaffrey to everyone rushing for Mason to everybody rushing for Garendo. You just seen how much money has been out there for waivers to just get these coveted backup players. Get them while you don't have to spend much on them before all the hype is on these guys.
That's what we're going to be talking about here. He's a guy who has been a thorn in everyone's side. And, I can't believe we haven't talked about him until week 15 here. But, hey, I give in. We need to talk about him, and that's why I see Ray-Ray McCloud of the Atlanta Falcons. We were so excited about this Atlanta offense. I'm speaking for the fantasy community here. With Kirk Cousins coming over and what he's been able to do in Minnesota, we thought he would be able to bring that to Atlanta. And lo and behold, we did not expect that Ray-Ray McCloud, of all people, would succeed the way he has. But he had 11 targets, 8 catches for 98 yards. Also, I guess unless you're in Scott Fishbowl, you don't really care about kick return yards. So he did quite well, Joe. But he continues to be a factor for this offense. Even in the past 3 weeks, he's had at least 6 targets each of the past 3 weeks. You look at his matchups going forward. He's got at Las Vegas, New York Giants, and at Washington. These are great matchups. So I think at the end of the day, I mean, we were hoping that Pitts could be something. We're thinking that Drake London was going to be this top receiver. Darnell Mooney did surprise, but we were not expecting Ray-Ray McCloud.
No, I was not expecting Ray-Ray McCloud, and it still just baffles me the fact that it's third down and you got to have it, and they're targeting freaking Ray-Ray McCloud in the slot. But hey, he seems to have a decent connection with Kirk Cousins. He looks to him a ton, 11 targets in this game. So I feel like we got to mention him. He's been performing pretty well, 3 straight weeks with double-digit points in PPR, and that's even without scoring a touchdown too. Which Kirk Cousins, one thing, he hasn't thrown a touchdown in 4 weeks, and in that span, he's got 8 interceptions. So, I don't know what's quite going on with Kirk Cousins the last few weeks here, but nonetheless, Ray-Ray McCloud has still been a factor, and because the deep balls seem to be working early in the year, but they don't seem to really be doing the deep ball. I know Darren Almoni had a few deeper completions, but it's been more of the quick option routes here to Ray-Ray McCloud. So I still think with the great matchups, I think in a pinch you could continue to play this guy.
Yeah, definitely 0 to 5%. And he's a guy I'd want to hold on my bench because you may need to play him. You might, who saw George Pickens being a late scratch? I didn't see that happening. So you might have situations where you've got a bad matchup or somebody all of a sudden gets out and we weren't expecting it. So having a guy like Ray-Ray McCloud, I think, could be helpful. And he's been the go-to. Honestly, it seems like when they're in trouble, Kirk looks his way, which is crazy. Now, the only thing is I think Kirk could get benched. I know Morris came out and said that Kirk is their guy, but again, they say that and the next day something it's like and the Falcons announced blah 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 blah. So they're still in the hunt. I would think they probably have to win the rest of their games, although their schedule's got cupcake because Vegas and Giants are the two worst teams in the league, so those should be easy 2 wins. And then you've got at Washington, that's tough. And then you got Carolina. So they should be able to, kind of sweep the rest of the way. And they need to be able to get one other win to tie with the Bucs. Bucs have the Chargers next week. So if, let's say, they lose coming up, well, although probably Penix comes in week 18, right? Because they probably are going to beat Vegas. They're going to beat the Giants. If they lose the Commanders, it's probably over. And then Penix comes in week 18 is probably what would happen.
Yeah.
Playing it out in my mind here.
Yeah, that definitely could be the case. But, I mean, if your season ends, week 17, you could be in good shape. I think Kirk Cousins could be there, barring any injuries. But I think if you're a Drake London owner, maybe you've been, flexing Darnell Mooney, given those guys like injuries that they've even been battling this year, I think he's just worth an ad because if one of those guys goes down, his volume is only going to go up. And he's already shown a decent volume, even with those 2 guys in the mix.
So that does it for this episode. We talked about a few players that you should go prioritize and pick up on the waiver wire for Week 15. Thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time.